Hello and welcome to my channel. Sorry I haven't been with you for a while. I've been doing other things. I went on a writing and running retreat and I've been very busy working on a novel and on my book 50 at 50, which will be the next running book, which I'll tell you about as soon as I've got a deal. But anyway, just to remind you, for anyone who enjoys my stories, this is the perfect Christmas gift. Other than, I don't know, a Ferrari or something, but yeah, Running Coyote and Fallen Star, 48 stories, half of which have been published, actually no, a third of which have been published in various magazines, so they're not rubbish, and I could certainly do some more sales, so pop online, get yourself a copy, buy one for a friend. Yeah, you have to buy it on Amazon, it's not available anywhere else. I wish. Anyway, I've got a story for you today, and I just realised I haven't got the iPad ready, but let's see if I can do that without destroying everything. So this is, as ever, a story based on 5 random words. It's a little bit long, hopefully you'll stick with me. And the random words it's based on are here, above my head. This is story number 103, and it's called An Uncharted Sea. For hundreds of years, science fiction writers have proposed solutions to the problem of have some tea first. Lovely, lovely tea. For hundreds of years, science fiction writers have proposed solutions to the problem of interstellar travel, namely the yawning aeons between our solar system and the nearest stars. Even Proxima Centauri, a comparative next-door neighbour, is so far away it takes light, the fastest thing known, 4.367 years to reach us. We're looking at the Proxima system, which in 2035 we know has 6 planets, 2 of which lie in the Goldilocks zone, where Earth-like life might be possible, and we're seeing it almost 5 years into its past. It's like trying to know something about what a person is doing from a photo posted on their meta feed 5 hours ago. They may have been killed in an astral crash, for all we know. Those Centauran planets may have been blasted into fragments by a passing asteroid years ago. So the very notion of travelling to such distant places on the merest hope of finding something still there when we arrive has necessitated some very bold thinking. First, we explored methods for accelerating a spacecraft to near light speed, but our most powerful banks of lasers, built by small armies of droids on the moon's dark side, could only power nanocraft with sails the size of Liechtenstein, nothing big enough to hold a human being. Next, we examined cryosleep, the possibility of putting humans into suspended animation for years and reawakening them upon arrival. 3 such missions have been tried, and all of them ended with mechanical failures which either crisped or froze their volunteers into inert matter long before the AI-controlled ships arrived to survey Proxima b, colloquially Brehi, or Proxima c, Copernica. Finally, the concept of generational starships was mooted. Ships travelling at only a fraction of the speed of light would take 70 or 80 years for a round trip. The notion was that the 2nd or 3rd generation of the couples who embarked upon the outward journey would return to pass on the results of their progenitor's mission. Unfortunately, the technology necessary to provide sufficient food, oxygen and water and maintain the health of human crew for 80 years has proven impossible to perfect. Russia sent a group of rats into space in 2029, plentifully provided for, with the intention of tracking how they bred and whether they might thrive. The rodents went insane, killed and ate one another within weeks. The final rat committed suicide by hunger strike just 76 days after launch. Thus the scientists and engineers went back to the drawing board. It wasn't until 2038 and the first complete body transplant, or brain transplant if you were so inclined, that a compromise presented itself. In the same year, scientists working in Japan discovered a method for temporarily inhibiting the part of the brain that recognizes the passing of time. It turns out that a brain in a vat could be kept conscious, potentially indefinitely, with a constant flow of blood and nutrients, so long as this portion was placed offline. The subject would experience full consciousness, but would remain untroubled by potentially endless gulfs of time. It would be like thinking at normal speed, while the world all around one reduces down to an almost infinitesimally slow state. What this meant was, provided you could find volunteers brave enough to be removed from their bodies and sent out into the vacuum for decades, individual human consciousnesses might cross the vast gulfs and return to tell future generations of their adventures. My name is Kenneth Lyman Stroud, and I'm one of the first star travellers to venture across the void in this way. I suffered a catastrophic accident on a sea skimmer in 2034 and was completely paralysed, my every bodily need catered for by machine. A very active man throughout my 20s and 30s, and independently wealthy thanks to my inheritance, this imprisonment in a useless, atrophied body was more hellish than the notion of becoming one of the first cerebronauts. Up until then, I'd lived a privileged and selfish life. My fiancée, who worked for a non-profit sending food parcels to war zones, ended our relationship with the damning indictment, "You won't do a single good thing if it doesn't directly benefit you." And she was right. Even this mission, although unprecedented and highly dangerous, will elevate my fame and post-mission earning potential enormously. And I have to admit, when she came to visit me in my paralysed state and remarked that she hoped the accident would improve me, I felt a cruel little pang of joy that due to Einstein's relativistic discoveries, she'd be long dead by the time I returned. Around 240 years will have passed on Earth by the time we get back. Eventually, myself and 2 other paralysed volunteers were operated upon, stabilised, equipped with new electronic sensory apparatus and installed into Centauri 3, the comparatively tiny ship, smaller than a 20th century minibus, I'm reliably informed, that would become our home for the next 87 years. We're now 67 years into our mission, less than a light year from the Centaurian system, and something has come to visit. We believe it's a probe of some sort. Certainly anything capable of keeping up with our velocity, over 60 million meters per second, with the ion drives on full capacity, can't be natural in origin. Even the swiftest rogue planet yet catalogued hasn't attained more than 15 million meters per second. "Give me all angles, Alpha," I ask, "and record it all." "Certainly," the AI intones in their clipped English. At once, all the cameras hardwired into my occipital lobe display their views. What I see would render me breathless had I any breath to inhale, or lungs to inhale it with. Not for the first time I wish that either Luann or Bradford was awake, so I could share this moment, but my co-pilots are only woken up from unconsciousness in shifts of 8 hours, alternating with my own phases of wakefulness, with just a 10-minute overlap in which to share our thoughts. It's all about preserving energy, the only true currency on board. The probe outside Centauri 3 is smooth, vaguely golden, metallic, and seemingly etched with dozens of very subtle lines, though whether they're looping whorls or decorative or functional, it's hard to know. It's almost carrot-shaped and around 90 feet in length, dwarfing our capsule's stubby hexagonal column. There are no straight lines anywhere upon it, no windows, no evident means of propulsion, and yet it skims, buzzes and glides around us like a hummingbird seeking nectar. We send out pulses of light in Morse code, display English letters, mathematical symbols, concentric rings of circles, and finally a diagram of our star system on the rear of our solar sail, which doubles as a kind of projection screen. But the probe does not reply, or indicate that it finds our hieroglyphics and any more interesting than any other part of our ship. At least it does not appear likely to consume us or blast us into fragments, which is a blessing. Having no one else to talk to, I talk to Alpha. "Shall we show it some faces?" I asked my AI colleague. Although Alpha is technically in control of the mission, we cerebronauts are encouraged to see them as a colleague. We use the gender-neutral pronoun as a standard practice with AIs. "Shall I start with your own?" they reply. I sometimes wonder if Alpha had been programmed with a sense of humour. If so, it is desert dry. "Why not?" I reply, playing along. "And Brad and Luann's too. Use the promo shot. It's about time I owned it." A terrible mistake, as it happens, and one I will have a very long time to contemplate. Our 3 pre-operation faces flash up on the sales screen, a promotional picture which for some reason had never seen the light of day. I now realise why. They clad us in traditional astronaut garb for the shoot, which seemed a little corny at the time. I'd always wondered why they didn't use the image, and had been hesitant to look at it until now. There I am in all my glory. I gaze at the face I once had and I don't miss it. On the contrary, it appalls me. Slack, sallow cheeks, a lolling tongue, and sunken eyes whose lids had to be held open with concealed metal clips for the shoot. That crooked bottom lip, from which spittle was constantly wiped by my many nurses. A face which has long since lost the muscular vigour of the young man who'd worn it. A dead and disgusting thing. My colleagues' paralysed visages are no better. Luann must once have been very pretty, but her pale, veiny skin appears porcelain thin and just as easily shattered. Her eyes have rolled back in her head, revealing milky white nothingness. Bradford at least retains his patrician salt and pepper locks, but his wrinkles are exacerbated by the weight of gravity bearing down upon his waxy, pallid features. His lids are weighted almost shut by his drooping brow. We all look dreadfully inanimate, and I suddenly realise that I've just presented my alien visitors with a morbid keepsake that says anything but welcome. Apparently I'm not alone in this thought. A few moments after our faces appear, the thick end of the probe opens up like a giant flower, and the craft seems to ripple and pulse like a jellyfish, then rip through the very fabric of space and vanish in a split second. At the same time, whatever form of propulsion it uses blasts us with a gravity wave that sends us spinning off course. If I still had a stomach, it would lurch with a sudden centrifugal force as our craft spins so quickly that the stars become overlapping spirals, wrapping us in illusory spiderwebs of light. I black out, or more accurately, am blacked out by automated systems, for safety's sake. When I'm awoken, Luann has been conscious for 8 hours. I feel her presence within my consciousness, as ever, like a fading whisper. We talk in whispers. Christ, Kenny, what the fuck did you do? I get a quick sit rep from Luann, and it's worse than I could have imagined. The gravity wave damaged several ship's systems. Alpha has been fried and cannot be awoken. Since they control the heater, which keeps our brains at a balmy temperature compared to the terrifying cold of space, and thereby functional during our periods of wakefulness, this is a significant worry. Automated systems have stabilized our rotation, but we are 1 million or more miles off course and will not now be able to slingshot around Alpha Centauri and achieve the planetary flyby we had intended. Looks like we won't get to ride the roller coaster after all, says Luann, trying to make sense of what will be a lengthy death sentence for us all. I'm amazed she can even attempt humour. I'm so sorry, Lou, I begin, trying to think what I can follow up with, but there's nothing. Yes, well, shit happens, she says. No, not shit like this, I think. She continues. So our course will now send us past Centauri and beyond the galactic outer rim, eventually out into deep space. The good news is that without Alpha online, our brains will receive enough solar power to function for about 70,000 years before we collide with anything. Normally this would seem a terrifying prospect, but with the chronobellum offline, time becomes essentially meaningless. I whisper something non-committal back to Luann. The problem is, only one of us has an intact serum filter, she continues. So Brad and I will be going offline within about 18 years, most likely. Serum is shorthand for the condensed nutrient stew our brains are fed with, and offline is of course a euphemism. It means death, real, actual, permanent brain death, which is the only sort of death we can experience. Fuck, Luann, that's rough. Yep, she replies with forced cheeriness. But just think of the things we'll see before then. Nebulae, new constellations, more than we ever imagined. I feel worse for you. You'll be all alone out here when Brad and I shuffle off. Do I detect a note of satisfaction in her sorrowful statement? It's really hard to read tone of voice when all you have to go on is an indistinct whisper in the back bedroom of consciousness. I feel a sense of relief that she'll be put to sleep for the next 8 hours. I need time to be alone, to think. Wait a minute, what did I just say? I just estimated a period of time. I felt a desire for a period of time spent alone. It makes no sense, it's impossible. Oh, one more thing, Kenny. The energy pulse which accompanied the gravity wave disrupted your chrono inhibitor. I'm afraid it knocked your time perception back on. Right, I'm going under. We'll talk soon, I guess. That must be a joke. For those without a sense of time, there's no such concept as soon. There's just a continuous present without regret, fear, worry, or hope. All of those sentiments are back on stream, and as I feel Luann's mind signature fading away into the substrate, I suddenly feel terribly, hopelessly alone. 70,000 years, at least, and most of it spent entirely by myself. Unless Alpha spontaneously wakes up, or our alien buddies return, there's just me and the void. Once my colleagues go off stream, there will be no need for extended sleep as a method for sharing energy resources, and the automated systems are set to keep me awake for most of each standard Earth day, with just an 8-hour period of enforced dream sleep to comply with evolution's requirement for regular mental annihilation. I'll feel every one of those several million days. In fact, I'm feeling them already, piling up in front of me like a nanocarbon wall rearing up in front of a sea skimmer. Except this traveller will crash through every chronological milestone without losing velocity or perishing. 100 years, 1,000, 10,000, 70,000, perhaps infinitely more, unless an asteroid, alien visitor, or rogue world snuffs out my light. I'm a lifelong atheist, faithless in every respect, but I could definitely do with the companionship of a higher being now. Perhaps it's time to come to terms with my own immortality. The witticism doesn't help. Bradley will be online in a little over 7 hours. It'll be up to me to tell him his fate. I wonder if he'll take it as well as Luann. When you have no sense of time, death becomes no more meaningful than donning a black suit. When time is suddenly returned to a mind that has learned to live without it, every naked day becomes both a promise and a curse. Before too long, I'm certain I will go utterly insane. I almost welcome it. For now, I suppose I might as well start by making a list of possible activities with which to fill the immensities of time that lie ahead. Perhaps it's time to learn to read Dante in the Italian. L'acqua ch'io prendo, chiama mon si corso. My course is set for an uncharted sea. I thank you. Yes, it's a bit bleak, that one. I'll try and write something more cheerful next time. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. It won't be a month before I return. I'm going to try and keep to a schedule of roughly one story a week. They'll probably be a bit shorter than that. But anyway, for now, thanks for listening. See you soon.